Okay, let's call to order. Thank you for coming this evening. We met in closed session. We have a quorum. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So I believe we start with student perspectives from the South.
Good evening.
Schwartz.
We're excited to introduce a couple of our students here. We also have Mr. Dustin Hauser, one of our PE Health and Driver Ed teachers, and Mr. Scott Lange, Department Chair for PE Health and Driver Ed. All of our PE classes have student leaders who help the teacher lead the rest of the class in the activities. Something new this year, our most severe multi-needs special ed students never had leaders in the class. It was the teacher with some of the aides. This year, motivated by some findings from a colleague, Mr. Hauser started a program where he has taken some of our student leaders and matched them up with our most severe multi-needs students in a PE class. And so it's an equal number, in some cases more, of our regular ed students with our multi-needs students. So here tonight to tell you about our new program is Katie Rock and Violet Klesta.
Hello. Well, basically our adapted PE program, there's one general ed PE leader for every one multi-needs student, and it really gives them the opportunity to have an individualized curriculum for PE. And some examples of what we do is when we go in the weight room, usually if there was only one teacher there, they wouldn't be able to explore like their opportunities, but since there's different people monitoring them, they get to do whatever they want and they have a lot of fun. And what we do as leaders is we come up with different games that work for every student, no matter what their disability may be, which I think is really awesome because all the kids get to have fun and interact with us. And also, like, we form really good relationships with them. Like, when we see them in the hallway, and they always wave to us, and we always say hi. And there's Friendship Club, which I know a lot of us have joined since we did this program. And Friendship Club is basically we hang out with the kids after school some days and just get to hang out with them. And it's really rewarding for us as leaders because we get to see how happy this makes them, and it makes us even happier. So that's basically what it's about.
Sorry, I have a list because everything's important. So the multi-needs kids benefits basically is kind of their individuality. They each get to be themselves, like when they're with us. And we do a lot of like dancing and skills that kind of revolve around their creativity too. So they get to be themselves even when they're around us. The big deal, like Katie said, is the one-on-one interaction between them and us. And it's kind of like we create real friendships with them because we're with them so much. So it's not like, oh, I'm just leading for these kids. It's like kind of like we're with our friends, which is really awesome. We also treat them as equals. We're not like, whatever, like feel, you know what I mean? But we treat them as equals, and I feel like they appreciate that because it's not like we're treating them different, and it makes the class a lot smoother and better. And as Mr. Hauser said, like if somebody came in to our class and watched us while we're all interacting, you could not tell who is separated from who, which is really awesome. And also it benefits them because it's time for them to get out, because some of them just go home and sit around. So it's actual like physical work. Our benefits are that we learn from one another. We actually have to lead classes. So I led with Katie, and we had to create a game for everybody, adaptive for everybody. So we still have that leadership aspect, like we're teaching the class, but we're also including everybody else. We also learn how to deal with and adapt to specific like problems and situation, because each child has a different disability. So on any given day, somebody could be completely sad or whatever, and we have to deal with that situation differently for each kid. And it's better for us because we know them now as like individuals, so you know that you have to deal with her a specific way compared to with him. So that's really nice. And pretty much everybody in this class has a positive attitude. Like all of us leaders love what we do, and almost everybody says it's like their favorite part of the day. It's definitely my favorite part of the day. And we all just, everybody I think just enjoys it. Like there's not one person that does not. The group of students we have is really nice, well-balanced, kind of like everybody's completely different, which is really nice. And our teacher is awesome. Mr. Hauscher is really awesome. So he's very supportive and understanding of a lot of stuff. So having a good teacher helps a lot. And that's pretty much it. Is there any questions?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for your service. I think this is just wonderful and incredible, and it really exemplifies everything that's good about our students. So thank you.
Thank you. No,
What was the process you had to go through to get selected to be a PE leader for this group?
Basically, what we had to do was we just had to go up to our teacher last year and tell them that we were interested in doing this. And I'm not sure if it was first come, first serve, or if they like evaluated you based on like leadership roles or something like that. But I know that you had to go out and tell them that you wanted to do this, and then they picked from the group of students.
There's a leadership class for all PE
yeah.
leaders, and then they looked for kids who were interested in this program from the leaders.
Got it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Just a quick question. How many are involved? How many leaders are involved?
14.
Nice number. And how often do you do this? Every day?
Yeah. Every day.
Every first period for 50 minutes, we have this every day.
Yeah.
Which is really nice to even start off your day
Yeah.
having a good time.
Yeah.
So it's really
Even if you
nice.
know you have a rough day ahead, it's great to start out with this.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Sounds like another case of maybe getting more than you're giving.
Yeah,
even though you
it
went
really
after
is.
it
It
to give,
yes.
and awesome.
And which is really nice because, like, sorry, I have a loud voice anyway. Like even us and the multi-needs kids, it's really nice because like we see them before class and after class, and they're still like super excited and happy to even see us and be around us, which is just awesome. So I think it's like both just completely, we just have a great time, and it's not like we're doing this because they're doing this. We balance each other out, which is really awesome.
Well, I'm hearing you talk about the challenges of dealing with individuals and recognizing their needs and how best to reach them, and those are things that are going to serve you well the rest of your life. And really, whether you're dealing with someone with special needs or not.
Yeah.
So, well done.
Thank you.
Do any of you want to pursue education and
I'm thinking about it.
So am I, actually.
Yeah.
special
After
ed?
this experience, it's been like,
Yeah.
you guys may think that we're inspiring for doing this, but honestly, every day these guys inspire us. They're always
Super.
happy, and they always make our days. So.
Oh, that's just fabulous.
That's neat. That's neat.
Very good.
Anybody else?
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, curriculum proposals?
On to business.
Out of business.
Tough
Yeah.
act
off
to
to
follow,
business.
man.
Thank you.
What's got out for you?
Yeah, I know.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Dr. Kupka. Each year, we go through a process of developing and recommending new courses to the Board of Education. We actually start at this time with the expectation that sometime in the next couple of months, we would get the courses approved so they can be included in the registration guide, and that students can actually sign up for these in the following school year. In this case, 2015-16. We have 4 course proposals tonight. The presentation will be Mrs. Zaccardi, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Student Learning, and also the department heads from the respective departments and in both schools, who have actually been the ones that on the ground doing the grunt work on all these initiatives. So, Ms. Zaccardi?
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. As Dr. McDonald said, we have 4 new course proposals, and we also have 2 name change proposals. This represents 3 departments: our Career and Technical Education Department, Math, and Social Studies. As Dr. McDonald said, our department chairs will present. We'll start with CTE, where we have 2 course proposals and 2 name changes. Mark Marandola, our department chair from North, will present. Val Moses, the department chair from South, is unable to attend tonight. After Mr. Marandola explains these proposed courses and name changes, there'll be time for questions, and then we'll move on to the math, time for questions, and then on to social studies. Okay. So with that, I will ask Mark to come to the table and share information with us about the 2 name changes and the 2 proposals.
So we have a slide in front of you that outlines some of the information, the name changes, as well as the new courses for career and technical education. I'd like to start by thanking you for the opportunity to present these new courses on behalf of Valerie Moses, who's not with us this evening, and the CTE departments at both North and South High Schools. Again, my name is Mark Maridola, CTE Chair at North High School. I'm presenting these changes to you. To begin with, we're proposing a name change of our existing Foods 1 course. And so you'll see that we want to change Foods 1 to Introduction to Culinary. We feel this name change better reflects the connection to college and career pathways. This connection is important as we transition to a series of culinary courses that allow students the opportunity to see the connection to the culinary and hospitality industries. I think in a nutshell, we're trying to move away from the traditional home ec type of foods class into more of a foods class or curriculum that is going to prepare students for college to better understand pathways, college majors, but that also align with those college majors and with COD and TCD. We also aim to change the name of our parenting course to Early Childhood Care. So the change would be from parenting to early childhood care. A name that more accurately reflects the goals and focus of this course. This course is less about parenting and more about the interactions in teaching young children. For those unaware, both campuses run a play group in which young children from the ages of a few months old up to, I think it's 2 years old, are brought in, and our high school students are the ones that create curriculum, interact with those students, and it's an incredible opportunity for our high school students. Our goal is for high school students to recognize the college connections and career pathways that relate to early childhood care. This next slide outlines some of the new courses that we're proposing. The 2 additional courses students can enroll in after satisfying the requirements of Intro to Culinary are Advanced Culinary Arts and/or Baking and Pastries. Intro to Culinary will serve as a prerequisite for both of these courses. So a student will need to enroll satisfactory, complete Intro to Culinary before they can take one of these 2 other courses. Advanced Culinary Arts is similar to our existing Foods 2 course, and we will seek to replace our existing Foods 2 course. Advanced Culinary Arts will build upon the skills and knowledge gained throughout the introductory course. This course will focus on meal planning, appetizers, beverages, juices, sandwiches, soups, salads, grains, pastas, meats, poultry, and fish, in addition to global foods. So we're able to take our existing or our previous Foods 2 course and provide a little bit more detail, a little more depth in what the students are going to be studying. In addition, the other course that we're proposing is the Baking and Pastries class. This has come about because of the demand from students, mostly of which I think from a lot of Food Network shows, the overall popularity of baking and pastries. But we also have a good number of students that are asking, what's the next course that I can take? They've really enjoyed the Foods 1 class, they've taken Foods 2, and so they want to know what the next step is. In fact, we have a lot of students that will go on to TCD or in fact go into the culinary, kind of pathway, but yet they've only really been able to take these introductory classes with us, and they wanted to know what that next step is. As well as we want students to learn about other opportunities in the culinary as well as hospitality industries. Today, many baking and pastry shops cater to those with special dietary needs. The Baking and Pastries course will focus on baking basics, yeast and quick breads, cakes, cookies, candy making, pies and tarts, and specialty desserts. That is all I have, as far as explaining our name changes and new course proposals. If you have any questions for me.
I do have a question. With this focus being more on career paths and things, are our food kitchens at both of the schools going to be able to sustain that, because they are more home type kitchens versus institutional?
Absolutely. I would say that our current kitchen setup doesn't prevent us from these courses. I would say that a revamped kitchen would definitely help with what we would be able to do in these courses, especially because a lot of students want to go on into the culinary field, and so they see a lot of these professional kitchens, and they see like the Pro Start types of kitchens in the programs, and I'd love to be able to provide that. Unfortunately, our kitchens aren't up to par. However,
Well, they haven't been updated since what?
absolutely, it's been quite some time.
Yeah.
Is it on a timetable somewhere? Is it
Yeah.
on a list of
Is there a
of
cycle
priorities?
where they would come up?
That'd be part of the master facility plan work.
That's part of the new plan, right?
Okay.
I would presume that back in the 1990s, there was quite a bit of retrofitting and refinishing in both schools, and it could be at that time they decided to do something or they decided not to, because it is my impression at that time they did reduce a lot of the CTE facilities, with the understanding that some of that would move to TCD. And there was less of an interest in it at the time. What I've seen happen, though, is Mark is talking about, is increased interest at the time, and that's clearly one of the areas that's on our master facility plan as an area for improvement or a need for improvement.
How, in terms of a timetable, though, is
We don't have one yet.
They're starting that. But as far as you understand, right now, we can handle what's going to be done.
In speaking with the foods teachers who know better than I do, they've explained that our facilities are adequate for these changes, these new courses that we're proposing.
Is there any intermediate sort of things that would be helpful or could be done between now and the time that we would do something with?
I think, Mike, the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
But I can't answer definitively until we have that plan put together.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And my hope is that we'd have that something of substance by the end of the school year or the summer. But I can't answer that tonight.
I really love these name changes. I mean, it invokes a seriousness about the craft, as opposed to Foods One. This is the right thing to do, and aligns with the college focus that you're talking about. I think it's great. If there's a need for people to sign up to sample things.
Or take the course.
I'll sign up to be the judge.
Audit course? I don't know. You might want to rethink that sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Any other
Great
questions?
news. Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
You want a Kleenex?
Thank you.
From there, we'll work on our Math 3. I have John Heldman and Paul Stevenson, our math department chairs, who will present information on Math 3.
I can't believe we're this far along already.
All right. Well, again, thank you for this opportunity to come and present. I'm Paul Stevenson, the math department chair at South High School.
John Heldman, math chair at North.
And this has sort of become an annual event for us. So we are proposing tonight the next math course in our integrated sequence, which is Math 3. There will be the 3 different versions of that, like there have been the prior courses, Math 3, Math 3S, and Math 3H. And we'll talk about what each of those look like a little bit in greater detail. Currently, we're in the second year of our new Common Core sequence, so we have students in Math 1 and also in Math 2. And in Math 2, we have freshmen and sophomores. And so as a result of that, this would be a course that would be a follow-up course to Math 2, so they'd have to have successful completion of Math 2, either 2S or 2H, to enroll in the course. And it would be primarily then for sophomore and junior students. It is, in all versions of it, a full year course, which would have a 1 math credit option. And this ultimately is replacing the advanced algebra and trig in our old sequence, so we're getting rid of advanced algebra 200, 300, 400. That will then retire really the last courses in the traditional curriculum of algebra, geometry, and advanced algebra trig.
As Paul stated, the Math 3 course is really essential at this point with the inclusion of the Math 1 and Math 2 curriculum in District 99. And it is going to follow the integrated approach. And just as a reminder for the board, we really define integrated in 3 different ways. Integrated in terms of topics within an individual course, as opposed to studying all of geometry in 1 year. We're studying geometry over the course of 3 years, in part over the 3 courses. But we're able to make connections between algebra and geometry and statistics within a single school year, as opposed to having to wait over the summer for the next course in order for that to happen. In addition, with the inception of Math 3, we will have a 3-year core program that will be very much interconnected and more richly connected in many ways than the previous curriculum ever was before, in terms of that integration with functions and algebra and geometry. As an example, in Math 1 we started studying linear functions and exponential functions and looked at the characteristics of those. And in Math 2, we've expanded upon those with new types of functions. We expect to do that in Math 3 as well, too. And really, Math 3 is the course where the most amount of connections will be apparent to students. Paul and I, as well as the teachers of these courses, have sort of been chomping at the bit, waiting for Math 3 to come into play, because that's where a majority of those connections can be made between courses, but also within a single course as well, too. And there'll be a heavy emphasis on modeling and asking students to take we've used a tools in the toolbox analogy. We've been building tools for 2 years, but Math 3 will complete the toolbox and ask students to not only use those tools, but to make decisions about which tools they choose in order to solve problems in mathematics, and really to look at a problem not just through an algebraic lens, but through a geometric lens or a statistical lens. And it's going to be a course that incorporates rigor and conceptualization at a level that we've really never had before in District 99. It's very exciting in that regard, but also very challenging as well. Over the past couple months, we have met as a committee. The Math Curriculum Committee has met to make sure that our curriculum guide from all levels of Math 3 are aligned to Illinois learning standards. We've also done an analysis of the PARCC assessments this past summer. Full-scale PARCC assessments came out, model assessments came out in preparation for this spring's first testing event, and so we took a very detailed analysis of those items and made sure that the types, not just in terms of the curriculum, but the types of assessment experiences that we're going to be asking of students in Math 3 will be in line with the PARCC assessment that's going to begin this spring. And then this is in line. We have in this proposal a portion of the proposal about honors, in which, much like in Math 2, we are proposing that honors be part of the Math 3 offering, which is analogous to the honors level of advanced algebra trigonometry that we've had in the past as well, too. So we're not restricting or closing any doors that haven't been opened in the past for students in terms of honors and more rigorous coursework. The honors course will contain some topics that are not in the core curriculum of Math 3, but more importantly, it will contain a deeper look at those topics and more rigorous problem-solving experiences in that regard.
I can tell you this year I'm teaching Math 2, and Math 2 is the second year of this sequence, which, if you kind of compare it to what we did previously, would have matched up with geometry, if you will. And yet, as I'm teaching the Math 2 class, I find myself thinking much more from a perspective of advanced algebra and trig. The level, the complexity of the things that we're asking our students to do, this entire curriculum, as we've made the implementation, has really stepped up as we had anticipated the rigor and the expectation to what students are being asked to do.
I'll step in real quick, too, and just share in regards to that I have 3 teachers at North that are teaching Advanced Algebra Trig 300, as well as Math 2 as part of their teaching load, and all 3 of them have come to me on multiple occasions of their own accord and said how proud and excited they are to have Math 2 students conceptualizing and describing mathematics at a level that their AAT students are not able to do so because of the changes in the curriculum. So it is very exciting.
And actually, if you want to go one level farther, the same thing happened in South with our advanced algebra trig 400 students, where Mrs. Olson, who is the teacher of that class, gave some of the questions from Math 1 and Math 2 text to those honors students as part of a project. And they really struggled with doing the same problems that the Math 1 and Math 2 kids are doing on a consistent basis, just because of the type of work that we're doing in those classes every day. So you can see sort of what the overarching themes are there. We won't go into those in too great a detail, I don't think. But one of the things that really is critical to us and continues to be probably the biggest change is not so much the content, but the focus on the standards of mathematical practice. When the Common Core State Standards of Mathematics were released, there were content standards, and then there was the standards of mathematical practice, which we refer to a lot as the habits of mind that we're trying to instill in our students. And that's where we have already seen the greatest growth, not just in the students in the year or 2 years that they've been in math classes of this nature, but also in the teaching staff. It's been a major shift for us as we've been implementing this as teachers, because it does require pedagogical changes. How do we do the teaching? And so there's been a huge shift there, and the teachers, I have to say, have done a fabulous job handling this very professionally, maintaining positive, throughout the difficult change. Because honestly, you've done something for a number of years one way, and now you're asked to change that. And it's been a very positive thing. And so Math 3 will continue that same focus, where, yes, there are changes in the rigor of the content and in the type of content that's being presented, but equally, or I would argue maybe more importantly, the standards of mathematical practice will be a focus on how that teaching occurs, the types of questions that we are asking our students, the way that we expect our students to respond to those questions, the way that we ask our students to interact with one another as they look at each other's responses to those questions. That type of thing is going to definitely maintain a focus in the Math 3 courses.
So I think in terms of what Paul just shared, the focus on the habits of mind has been a critical piece of this journey, but it is important for everyone to understand that by the end of the Math 3 experience, students in District 99 will be at the exact same place as students that have traveled through a traditional pathway that is aligned to Common Core. The difference being in the way and manner in which they've interacted with the material. And as Paul said, we've already seen benefits of being able to study algebra, functions, geometry, statistics over the course of 3 years in a more cyclic way than a one-and-done experience, as has been in the case in the past. And we believe that both the habits of mind approach as well as the integrated nature of the curriculum will put students in a great place for coming out of Math 3. Our focus for next year will be to look at our senior elective programs and what, if any, changes need to occur in terms of current courses or potentially new courses as a result of the Common Core curriculum that has been implemented in Math 1 through Math 3. We've already begun those conversations. We look forward to continuing those at the committee and administrative level in the spring and next fall, and we probably anticipate being back here at minimum with a name change or a curriculum modification for a senior elective course or two at this time next year in regards to bringing full closure to this modification. The last bullet on the screen is in regards to the period and a half option. Paul and I wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of both the students involved in this model as well as the teachers to thank the board for their support in terms of offering the period and a half support model, which provides an additional 22 minutes of instruction on a daily basis consecutively with their regular classroom teacher to allow students to be able to access a more rigorous curriculum without offering a 200 level or watered down version of the Common Core learning experience. Both in Math 1 and Math 2, it has been extremely valuable and important to have this this support. And we envision that in Math 3 it will be equally, if not more so, critical as we explore things in Math 3 that have never been explored in the previous Illinois Learning Standards in terms of curriculum, as well as asking students to synthesize in a way that they've never done before in terms of the habits of mind as well. So we're very grateful for that. The proposal includes the incorporation of that, and we feel that there is an extremely important and strong need for that, or we would not be including that within the proposal. With that, that's all the information that we had to share, and we look forward to any questions you have at this time.
That's great.
I have a question. Paul, since you teach the second year,
John does as well.
John, have you seen any integration problems between the students who take Math 1 in-house versus the ones from maybe the feeder districts?
That's a really good question. You know, I have students in my class who had Math 1 or Math 1S last year here at South. I also have a number of students who took that in one of our feeder schools, and I actually have one student who was in an algebra class at a parochial school that did not switch over. And so I have a very nice blend of those. And I think everyone last year who took Math 1, there was a lot of adaptation that went on because they hadn't had the courses prior to that either. So, this first year we are definitely making a lot of adaptations as we go. We are finding that there are students that have gaps in one area or in another area, and we're doing our best to fill those gaps as we go along. I'm anticipating, next year it will be better, and 3 or 4 years from now, the students coming into Math 2 will probably have a very different level than the students that we currently have in the course. But having said all of that, I think that what we have seen for the most part is that our feeder schools are doing a really nice job of doing Math 1, and they're coming in with a solid background with the majority of the topics that we have seen up till now. At least that's been my experience.
Okay. I have 2 more questions. How has the collaboration been with the feeder districts? Is it still ongoing? Could we do more? Could we extend our hand a little bit further?
We are still doing a lot. District Jefferson Junior High School. We just
we just completed a articulation experience with them where students or teachers from Jefferson came over and observed some Math 1 and Math 2 classes at North and South, and then we engaged in a professional development session and dialogue later that day with those same teachers.
Good, I think that's great.
Both Paul and I have visited District 58 and provided some support and professional development, as well as serving on their math committees over the past 2 years, and we continue to serve on their math committee. We are in current regular articulation efforts with Westview Hills, St. Mary's, St. Joe's, several of our other private or parochial schools as well too. And I think it's important for the board to understand and recognize that while many of the schools have transitioned to teaching Math 1 to their advanced 8th graders, they've also made significant strides in terms of teaching on-track students 7th and 8th grade mathematics that's been completely redefined compared to the old Illinois Learning Standards. And we've been very involved with conversations as well as planning with a variety of schools in that regard.
Okay. Probably the one thing that we continue to work on more than anything else is trying to make sure that they are also infusing those habits of mind, those standards of mathematical practice. And John has done some real nice work with District 58 as part of the curriculum committee that we've been sitting on for a number of years in helping the students, or the teachers in that committee to get a better handle on what those changes look like in our classrooms and what they can do a little bit differently as well as reaching out to the other schools, as John mentioned.
Okay. My third question is, have you seen some movement where a student may be in that extended class 1 year and then the next year maybe try to challenge themselves a little bit more and bump up to the other level?
Most definitely. And as I mentioned, I have in my Math 2 class a couple of students that were in Math 1S last year. So they did make that step. One of them is really struggling. But the other is being very successful in it. So, there are individual differences, but there certainly have been shifts from the 1S to the 2, and as probably there have been some shifts maybe back the other way as well. But
from the honors down?
Yeah, I haven't seen Haven't seen too much of that yet, because
Okay.
really this is the first year of the honors. You know, the Math 2 honors is only being implemented this year.
I think I have 3 such students actually in my Math 2 class, and 2 of the 3 of them are experiencing what I would classify as meaningful levels of success.
Oh, good.
But I think in terms of looking at this first cadre of students that experienced Common Core 8 the first time through, Math 1 first time through, Math 2 first time through, and now Math 3 next year first time through. I'm not surprised that we don't have more students that are shifting from the S model to the regular model because of the automatic challenges that were associated with them making the curriculum jump between the previous learning standards and the new learning standards. I would anticipate in the future, and I'm hopeful, that as we move year to year and students come to us in District 99 with more years of experience in a Common Core mathematics environment in grade school and middle school, that we will see a reduction, at least on some level, of the students that might need that period and a half support because they will be more well prepared for us entering our buildings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I should have asked previously, from a scheduling standpoint, how does that work with that additional half period? What are the students doing with the other half period? I mean, how does that work?
That's a great question. At both buildings, a majority of the S offerings are built into the lunch periods.
Okay,
so that their normal half period opposite lunch resource or off period is absorbed by that. There are some classes where that is not the case, but we've tried to schedule in such a way that minimizes the challenges of a student taking an elective or another course because of the fact that they need additional support in mathematics. And oftentimes some of those students are the same students that need support in English or reading as well too. And so we're able to create a scheduling package that provides one or both of those supports without losing the opportunity to take classes.
Still, it made for more fun for our counseling staff, I think. Challenges, and kudos to them for getting it done, really. So I mean, I have 2 students right now, and I mean, just getting all the classes to work, and we aren't able to get things to work the way we want it to as it is, and to have something like this really presents yet another challenge. So it's hats off to making it work. And you said next year you'll be in front of us again with some tweaks to the class, because that's what I'm really curious about now is right. what happens to all those classes that come after.
I think our initial analysis shows that because regardless of whether a student completes a traditional or integrated pathway, there are some differences between where they end up at Math 3 compared to advanced algebra trigonometry, and that has implications for pre-calculus. It also has implications for other senior electives, but again, we'll take the opportunity to reiterate that we continue to have the same opportunities for students to access the AP mathematics curriculum as we've had in the past, and that we don't anticipate any changes to the AP curriculum other than those that are coming down from College Board in that regard.
Okay. Very good.
Well, Darwin said, it is not the strong who survive, but those most adaptable to change. So we look forward to what you bring to the table. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh, I did want to mention, you know, so I'll use a little bit of my report out time right now from the Triple I conference we went to. One of the groups I sat into was a workshops I sat at was one that I thought was going to be about you know, what do you do with a 1950s building and adapting it to, and it turned out to be a little bit of false advertising. But it was a more rural district making a presentation, and there was a very excited, energetic math teacher and a science teacher. And they were talking about implementing Common Core, and they were talking about flipped classrooms, and they were talking about things that we've been doing here for about 3 years. And so I wanted to express my appreciation to a job well done on behalf of our staff, because this just doesn't happen everywhere else in Illinois. And it gave me a little, as I sat there, listening, not this evening, but the other weekend, just amazed at. I mean, I already knew what they were talking about. It was old news to me because of what you're doing here. We're really leading the way. We're leading the way.
Without its challenges, but it is very exciting, and it's doing good and right by kids, and it's exciting to have that happen.
It's exciting. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and John.
John and Paul.
George and Ringo.
Yeah. Our final course proposal for tonight is from the Social Studies Department. We have Janae Demlow, our new North High Social Studies Department Chair, and Chris Esposito, our South High Department Chair, who will present Multicultural Studies.
Thank you for having us this evening. We're excited to present this new course on behalf of the Social Studies Departments of North and South High Schools. I'm Chris Esposito, Chair at South.
And Janae Demlow, again, Chair at North.
Our rationale for the Multicultural Studies course is that it's a highly relevant course that fits within every major area of state, regional, and local learning standards with regard to 21st century learning. It is a course students, parents, and faculty have been asking for years, and after much research, reflection, contemplation, and preparation, we have a complete proposal for your consideration.
If you can refer to the Illinois State Learning Standards, you'll see that they require schools to teach students about our multicultural American society. In this slide, you can see the state requires students to analyze immigration patterns in relation to how our culture has been and is shaped. Specifically, you will see referenced in the standard that students should identify how various cultures have played a role in creating our multicultural American society. Further, students are expected to learn about how social change has occurred in our society. This course will examine the interaction between people and institutions. This course will also provide a direct opportunity for all students and downers to analyze how their personal histories have enriched United States culture and how the ideals of the Founding Fathers have influenced the development of a multicultural United States. The course will also provide students the opportunity to fulfill the learning standard to explain the impact and importance of prejudice on social, political, and economic institutions over time.
Our ROE has made recommendations in their book, Voices from DuPage County, that the contributions of African Americans and Hispanics should be celebrated in our curricula. This course will meet our ROE's recommendations while celebrating the contributions of all American people. In District 99, this course will address several goals in our strategic plan. Specifically, Multicultural Studies will address the integration of programming to support students in the middle. It is meant to instill in all students a sense of pride in their heritage. The curriculum is also directly correlated to preparing our students for the realities of 21st century work environments. It is our hope that having a Multicultural Studies course will show our district's commitment to diversity in all aspects of education. Multicultural Studies is designed around an introduction to the field, followed by parallel units on different American cultural groups. Each unit is keenly focused around central questions and supported by specific learning targets. The central questions and learning targets are both historical and current. The course will celebrate accomplishments, analyze strife, and discuss current issues in light of historical knowledge.
In the first unit, we will introduce students to the field of multicultural studies. We want students to understand how this field is situated in our current American society in real and important ways. To accomplish this, we will draw particularly on history and sociology to frame the field and give students context to understand and take positions on modern issues. The first cultural unit will focus on the immigration experiences of Europeans to the United States. People want to understand their ancestral journey, and our students are no different. Every immigrant group has experienced wonderful accomplishments and saddening discrimination. From the Irish, Germans, and Italians to Eastern European immigrants, all groups have greatly contributed to the growth of our nation. We will look at immigration patterns, law, economics, government, and social issues for groups of European immigrants. You can see from the central questions, students will also be pushed to explore and understand history and current issues while considering their own perspectives and lived experiences. By the end of the unit, students should understand specific patterns of immigration history in the United States and be able to analyze these patterns. Each additional unit of study will follow the same outline and will share parallel central questions and learning targets as students explore the experiences of African Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, and Native Americans.
3 social studies department chairs and 5 social studies teachers reviewed 6 possible textbooks for this course. Following our recommendation, we had the book reviewed by a reading specialist for readability to ensure appropriate rigor. The book we settled on and plan to propose, should this course be accepted, is Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the USA by Dr. Richard Schaefer. Dr. Schaefer is a professor of sociology at DePaul, where he served as chair from 1997 to 2003. He's published over 30 titles, and many have gone to numerous editions. Racial and Ethnic Diversity in the USA provides a thorough examination of the major ethnic groups in the United States from the sociological and historical perspectives. The text is accessible for students when considering readability, syntax, and organization. The pictures, graphics, and charts aid student understanding of concepts. As you can see, other high schools, leading high schools in our state and our country, are addressing multiculturalism and elective course offerings. Those schools include, but are not limited to, Oak Park River Forest High School, New Trier, Hinsdale Central, Lane Tech, Whitney Young, Hinsdale South, and Naperville North. Thank you for your time, your consideration, and if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them.
Thank you. Mike, you look
I guess
like you're
I'll go
holding back.
first. Well, first off, I mean, this sounds like, a lot of this sounds like something that I hope all the students are getting some exposure to it in some extent. So throughout the curriculum, I'm assuming that much of this exists, only not in the depth that would be explored in the class, correct?
Correct.
And so what would be the prerequisites for the class?
So this is a junior-senior elective course, the same prerequisites as the rest. So it would be Global Connections freshman year, U.S. History sophomore year, and then it's up to student choice.
Okay.
Any student who would like to take the course and wishes to be enrolled could be enrolled in the course. It's a half a credit, like most of our other elective courses. So.
Next.
Do you have an idea of how many students are interested at this point, or is it?
Well, we know we do have a lot of student interest. Last year, prior to this course being proposed, it was, it was in the registration guide, and the requests we had from students at South were over 90 students, and that was within days of us starting recommendations. So I anticipate having a minimum of 6 sections at South. I could see it being far more, but I know we have an awful lot of interest.
That's great.
I can also add, though I can't speak to the interest at Downers yet, at Naperville we offered 2 courses where I came from, Naperville North, Chicago Urban History, which was an honors course very similar to this that studied immigration patterns in the city of Chicago. And then we also had Minorities in American Studies, and those 2 classes were never under 10 sections for either. They were by far our most popular electives that students took, right under psychology, which was pretty high as well. So
That's great. I look forward to looking at the textbook.
And what would you say is our overall need or purpose? Like, why do we have to have this class? That isn't, what needs aren't being met currently in the classroom with our curriculum?
So we've heard from students over and over again, particularly our students of color, who have said we don't see ourselves reflected in this curriculum. At Downers Grove South, there was a play that was done where the social studies department was directly called out by the students saying, where am I? Why is there this wall? Where is this line? We've seen it in student exit surveys year in and year out that where we need to do more to study the cultures of our students of color. And so that's where it comes from.
So isn't there, though, an Illinois learning standard that mandates that we need to have African American history or some form of culture being taught in our curriculum currently?
And we do.
Okay. So how would this?
More in depth.
Yeah, it's a deeper study.
Deeper study, more focused. It's the essence of the course is to look at the different groups And as they set it up, going back some slides, they basically have a framework with which they go through every group. So
the different units. There were like 6 or 7
right.
units, yeah.
They didn't put it on the slide, but in effect, if they had, it would show where Unit 2, European American experience. The Unit 3, is that African American?
Yes.
Would say the same thing. The essential questions would be the same. The learning targets would be the same. So it's a structure by which every group, they purposely review every group. So it's a more focused in depth.
So would you say then it's more focused on history? Like if there was a percentage breakdown of current events or sociological aspects versus history, what do you think the breakdown might be?
Well, at this point in time, it's hard to say. There's a lot of course development that still has to go on. I mean, this is an incredibly complete proposal just for this stage of the game to have learning targets and central questions. So all of those kind of things are going to have to be worked out in more depth. In terms of sociology versus history with regards to percentages, it's very difficult to say.
So I guess, you know, what my question is really getting at, when you look at our electives, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have 18 current electives in social studies?
Correct.
Right? If we take out the 5 AP course offerings, and a typical normal student is looking at 13 electives, correct?
Correct.
At North and South. So when they're looking at that, and you look at their elective bases, there's 3 categories: history, social studies, and behavioral science. What category of those 3 do you see this course fitting into?
I actually see it as a cross between history and behavioral science, because it really is a combination of how history impacts the way we interact with each other socially. Yeah. So it's unique in the sense that when we're typically teaching all of these subjects throughout a history class, you don't get the time because of content restrictions and how much we have to get through to really delve in depth into the current implications of historical events. So I see it as something that allows us to take each particular unit, focus on that particular group, whether it be Lithuanians coming over here or Africans from the Sudan are different than African Americans who were brought over here. That's a conversation we don't really get to have in the middle of U.S. history. You focus on, but they get a lot about slavery and the Civil War, but they certainly don't get how a Sudanese refugee is going to have an entirely different experience. So the history is obviously incredibly important, but it's unique to the group that you're focusing on without continually having it within the context of U.S. history or culture, which is what Global Connections is always trying to cram in with a lot of history as well. We have to water it down so much that everything ends up getting kind of lost in the shuffle.
So it's a traditional survey course is what it ends up being.
Yeah.
Meaning you can't cover 400 or 500 years of U.S. history. There are certain things you can leave in. Some things have more attention and some things don't. And along that line, our visioning 10, 20 years down, when we talk about this 21st century learner, do you see our district moving toward course offerings like a college or university, meaning we're covering so many extra things that allows students to pick and choose as you would in a college? Let's say if I really wanted to focus on, Hispanic Americans, and I really want to go back historically, I want to study the Mexican War of 1844. Are we going to get to that point? I mean, where do you envision us going? Sure.
One of the things I've kind of thrown out to Gina a little bit is something that I think is valuable, because students have, in specifically social studies, such a broad interest base that trying to keep up with them becomes almost insane. That we would offer some sort of capstone in historical and social inquiry where students at their senior level could design a research project based on personal strands of interest. Wow. And it could be offered either weighted or non-weighted. And it answers that exact question instead of us trying to continually say, well, what will they be interested in next? Right. A student who's interested in gender studies and is looking at that as a college career could certainly have a focus in that, as well as a student in psychology or straight history. That's great. If they wanted to focus on a specific war, it becomes less teacher-driven in the sense that, oh, I really like this particular war, let's make a class out of it. It becomes instead, we're going to give you the courses that we think every educated student needs to be prepared, and then allow them as they enter right before college to choose themselves ways they could So we might be back
It's
next
exciting.
year.
We haven't told our departments about this yet, so we could just.
Oh, so this is on the
Keep it on the
QT.
down low, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Extracting information.
You would agree, though, across the state, when you look at some of the schools that you were showing already have these courses online, with a 3-year requirement in social studies and with 18 electives, I mean, we're probably at the top of the spectrum as far as what we offer and the demand as far as there are not many schools that offer 3 years.
Absolutely. We had teachers at NCSS this past weekend, and they were approached by some leaders in NCSS that said, you really need to just go ahead and present on your electives program. You are doing things that nobody else in the nation is doing. You should spread this. You should let people know, because it's truly outstanding. The amount of student choice, the availability of course offerings for students is just so much greater. Wow. So yes, I mean, we've heard that, and we want to make sure that we can hit student interest, but also make sure that we're focused in ways where we need to be.
Good. And when you talked about the study that was conducted by your department about the readability of the book, what reading level was determined that it was at?
So because it's a textbook, they had to measure in different areas, and it spanned everywhere from the high 10th, low 11th grade level up to the 13th grade level. So we really are focusing on that junior, senior year. It's appropriate for junior, senior / introduction to college level course.
Okay. And were you aware by chance the author, as you said, was from DePaul? They're actually offering this book for Sociology 200 level. There's a race and ethnicity course that DePaul offers where this gentleman teaches. That it's a college level book. So I was, along those lines, I was kind of concerned that there was a slide that you had that said we're trying to look at underserved students or in the middle type students. Isn't there, aren't you afraid that might be above some of our students if we're targeting middle range students if it's a college level textbook?
Well, I mean, we do a lot as it is with differentiating our text and really trying to make it so that kids have strategies to access that text, modify text where needed. I think the noteworthy part of the noteworthy part there is that the professor teaches the course, which is probably having something to do with the fact that book. Always helps the old pocketbook there. So, but in terms, we did have a reading specialist do the readability study, and according to, the experts in our district, they determined that this is something that, yes, it's going to push some of our kids in the middle, but that's something we're doing at the freshman and sophomore year as it is to prepare students for our electives program.
As we're talking textbook, would you mind me interjecting a question?
Sure, no, please.
Now, you mentioned these other schools having this similar curriculum. Are they using the same textbook?
No. Both of them, in fact, and this is common in a lot of districts, at Naperville North, Chicago Urban History uses a series of texts, and it depends. It's some of them are, like Devil in the White City, for example, is one that they studied, where they're using a book to analyze the development over time. So they've started picking and choosing, and because we're moving towards one-to-one, I was constantly in there. Are we ordering a new book for minorities, or are we going to do one-to-one? And the general consensus was moving toward one-to-one because the materials had been, when you've taught it for such a long time, the teachers have a vast resource of materials that they're very comfortable with. So that's where it was. Now they're not using this. But that course is also open to sophomores, minorities in American Studies. And the Chicago Urban History is an honors level, so they were different. They were meeting different needs.
I'd also say that, as the board is aware, we've done an incredible amount of staff development for content teachers to assist them to teach reading in their content areas. And that, whereas had we not done that, or if that had not been a focus for close to a decade, I would be more concerned about a book at that level. In addition, one of the goals has been, that strategic goals has been to try to push kids into a level that perhaps are not, it's not easy, it's a stretch above their level. I mean, frankly, the math curriculum has done that for just about every student we have. So, is there a responsibility on the part of the teachers to make sure that kids can access the text? Absolutely. But I do believe we set the groundwork based on our staff development, and we have the resources to assist if we need that.
I know one of the questions last year for having this continued over to this year was that we didn't have an anchor text of sorts. And there was a lot of discussion around, we're going to have a number of supplemental texts. Can you talk about the supplemental aspect, meaning do you have like a percentage breakdown, what you're looking at so far, and how are we as a Board of Education going to be able to judge, the level of the supplements that you're going to be using?
We do not have a supplemental breakdown. Again, in terms of the development of the course curriculum at this point in time, it's really difficult to say. What we know is we have a solid textbook if it is approved, if the course is approved and then the textbook is approved by the board, that we would be able to use, in my opinion, for a lot of the course.
All right. I guess my concern is that, there are a lot of, and this will be my final point, there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of things that we need to do as a Board of Education. There are a lot of resources that, if we could anticipate a lot of needs. I think personally, 18 electives is a lot. I'm pretty sure if we're not number one, we're pretty close to having the most electives in the state, and I'm very proud of that. I think we do a great job, and I think that if a student is going to have just 1 year of taking electives, and I think, for instance, having them take a full year of global connections, they're learning about culture, they're learning about diversity, they're learning in U.S. history about immigration, they're learning about slavery, Reconstruction, Harlem Renaissance, Civil Rights Movement. I think they're getting a lot of those things. I think we're taking away with this course. I think we're taking away what we offer in sociology currently with ethnicity, diversity, and some of those issues. I think we're taking away from contemporary issues and talking and debating about some of those issues. And frankly, would rather see something like a capstone course if we're going to offer anything, because I think what's being proposed here is more of an overlap of a lot of things that we're currently already doing. And I would personally say, as an Illinois teacher of social studies for 15 years, that if we're already meeting these Illinois learning standards, that we're in full compliance, and we have a number of other courses that don't always run every single semester or every year, I think we're taking away from some of the excellence that we've done. And frankly, as a board member, when we have limited resources, I'd rather see, in one of your slides you mentioned, racial diversity of our staff. I mean, do we have any people of color currently teaching our kids in either department, at either school?
No, we do not.
Not in the department.
I mean, in the department, I would rather, I think the importance of that teacher in front of that student to tell a personal story has a much greater impact than some of the things that I think are being proposed. I think we're frankly overlapping, and I think that some of our resource money could be spent in better ways.
I have a different perspective, and I have to say that as a parent of 2 children who fall into minority categories, I say thank you for this, because I have heard at my dining room table that my children don't see themselves in Global Connections and in other courses that have been offered. So I think this is wonderful. I would also remind, to your point, I think it's very true that we don't have a diverse staff. It's something we've been trying to recruit for years, and we have not been successful. And I would say we need to reinvestigate that and maybe kick those activities up a notch. I had one question, though, and that was because race and ethnicity are not mutually exclusive. Are you going to have and I know you're still in the planning process, but how are you going to address the issues of biracial families and biracial children, et cetera? Again, I just want to say thank you. I think this is a wonderful offering that's long overdue.
I think I can answer that one. I teach sociology, and global connections and psychology are pretty much my areas right now. And I think as social studies teachers, we, unlike any other teacher in the building, have the biggest challenge in what we do every day. And we're meant to make sense out of a world that is senseless, and to try to do it in a way that educates and doesn't offend and supports and still gives time to everything we need to cover. I think the struggle we all have as social studies teachers is seeing an increasingly diverse population and wanting kids to know that they all matter no matter where they're at, and whether they're biracial or, fully of a certain ethnicity or race. honestly, the struggles I have are far more about teaching the Middle East conflict than biracial issues. I don't know any teacher in social studies who doesn't approach that either wanting to throw up or wanting to run in the other direction, but we have to do it.
With great care.
And I completely get what you're saying, Keith, about, well, we have it in these other areas, but I would say that as a sociology teacher, I would gladly give up sections in that class to see kids go into a multicultural course. And I get to teach in sociology a small unit on culture and a small unit on racism. But the time of attention, kids are so hungry to understand their place. And, you know, I literally find myself like, oh, we got to move on because we got to get on to the next unit. It is not exclusively devoted to a much more rich and broad understanding of their place in the world and why people are so angry at each other and what we can do to understand each other. I think in talking to Chris, I've been very pleased at, as we were going through this course, things we started fighting about or getting into about. We started going at it about the Indian mascots. We have very different opinions. And here we're both social studies teachers, and we don't get that time in class to really sit with Stu. You get a day on it. Well, there's a whole history, and there's two sides, and we feel very committed to presenting all sides, not my side, not his side, not one kind of view of one town versus another, but a view that allows everybody to say, well, why do you think other people think this way? Why do people in this room disagree? Let's try to understand it in a way that we can not offend each other and not turn it into a Jerry Springer show, but talk about it in an educated way with language that is respectful. And that's the best we can do as teachers, and hopefully we're supporting this course and believe in it in spite of the resources because we see a need for it and we believe in it and think kids really want to be in a course like this.
I would also, just as my final point, and I think you're right, Keith, I think we run a danger of diluting, of offering too much. But I don't think that I don't think that stopping offering new courses is the way to solve that. I think having a hard evaluation of courses that have been in place for a couple of years that maybe, you know, haven't picked up quite a few students' interest would be a better way to take a look at cutting that.
And I don't disagree with that. I just think, you know, sometimes we lose sight of, we want to look at things that divide us more than things that bring us together. I firmly believe that civic education has an opportunity to bring more people together, that tells the American story. It says, you know what, we're a great country, we've done some not so great things, we've done some pretty fantastic things, and yet we attract everyone from around the world to still come and be a part of what we've done. I worry sometimes that our kids don't know all the amendments in our Constitution, don't know the six pretense of the preamble, couldn't tell you how many articles in the Constitution, couldn't tell you really what the Declaration stands for, means, or says. I'd rather see more of an emphasis on that civic health, that civic-minded person, in addition to those things that divide and separate us, quite frankly. You know, and I'll give you a quick example. When I ask kids the very first day of my class, I ask them, what is your nationality? And, you know, if I have 150 kids, I'll have between 5 and 10 say, I'm an American. They'll all say, I'm an Italian, something, I'm African, I'm Asian, I'm this. We're all Americans, and I think we lose sight of that bigger fabric that brings us together instead of, well, we find this thing to divide us and separate us, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. Well, let's celebrate the things that, you know, make us who we are together.
See, I guess I just have a different perspective, because to me it's more inclusive. We're being more inclusive. We are all part of the American culture. We're all part of the American quilt. And some of us have different colored skins, and some of us have different backgrounds and whatever, but let's celebrate it all. So I just have a very different perspective. I think this is a more inclusive. I think it does recognize people's history and personal history. And, you know, again, full transparency, but when your children don't look like your teachers, it's kind of nice to have that called out, that they do have their own, history, and they do have their own culture to fall back upon.
And it seems to me that just because you have seen this demand from the students, the requests or whatever, it indicates that there is a hunger for this kind of education. It seems to me that we're not necessarily talking about what divides us. We're talking about the characteristics that are here, and that we have to understand them before we can get at that total understanding. It's a long process. I agree, the civics education is really important, but we have to kind of know how we're going to get there. It may be that students will never understand the Bill of Rights unless they understand the diversity that sort of gets into all of that. You know, where did the 14th Amendment come from and all of that. So it's very complex. The whole situation is complex, but I just think this course will really take us a long way toward that better understanding that you're talking about. Interesting discussion about it.
Yeah, if I might say, I mean, just as taking all this in, you know, I guess I wasn't seeing completely different viewpoints. I mean, I'm hearing both expressions of that these are important things for us to learn about and understand. Mm-hmm. One thing that did concern me, Keith, did I hear you say that you had an impression that maybe somehow something was going to be taken away from some of the existing offerings we have?
No, meaning when you give more options, when you give more course selections, it can take away from things like American government, which is not required right now, can take away from contemporary issues.
So the concern might be that students would be choosing this class instead of another option.
Meaning I think the options to study multiculturalism exist now as they are. They may not be as strong, but I don't think, you know, as our teachers have mentioned already tonight, you can't talk about every single subject. You can't talk about every single aspect of our history, of our culture. I think that giving them an interest or a spark so that when they do go to the collegiate level, they'll have ample opportunity to be able to explore those things.
So to kind of understand the concern maybe a little bit better, it's more of an issue of understanding when we introduce something new, that something else might be being shed to make room for that, and there has to be an analysis as to whether or not it's worth that endeavor. And I think that's what I'm hearing you express, and I think that's a valid concern. But I support. Actually, I would think this is a great class. I wish there were more hours in a day.
That's right.
Because I don't know what else I would want to give up. I will say that I heard a concern and echoed by Julia, and something that I know that our League of Women Voters has pushed on for several years, and that's that you know, there's at least a feeling, a perception in the community that we don't teach civics to the level that we should or we did. And I'm hearing that kind of bubble up here a little bit too, and so maybe that can be a subject of a future conversation. I'm just trying to summarize what I'm hearing. So
I would like to. One of the things that Keith said that did concern me a little was the idea that somehow this is divisive. Yeah. Or that our approach would be divisive. I think that as I'm sitting, that's one piece that I want to touch on, because I don't think that that's the approach that any of us have about it. In fact, I would say that the contrary. That's it. I think it's not trying to point at any one group and saying, well, look what you did or look what you did, because that certainly helps no one. And I don't think students are going to feel connected to our country and to our government if we're shaming them. The class is about opening it up to everybody, that everyone has had unique experiences, whether they're white, black, Latino, you know, wherever you're coming from. Our grandparents struggled. Some of them did well, some of them didn't. But it's everyone's unique experience, and an opportunity to say we're all here together doing this. Where have we made some mistakes? Where can we avoid them in the future? How can we improve? And get along with each other better, and quit repeating these problems in history that we've had. So I do hope that, if anything, that would not be a message that you take with what we're looking for in this course, just pointing out all these ways we are hating each other. I think kids want to be able to talk about what happened in a safe way, where they can say, you know, I know that's always a big struggle to try to get them to, what are your things you're not saying out loud? Let's get them on the table and let's talk about them, and why do you feel that way? can be a really powerful interaction with kids that you don't get you don't get the time, though we do touch on those things in a U.S. history class. You are bound to a schedule. And this would offer a much more in-depth way for them to look at those issues.
Hopefully the class will do a lot to study the differences in those backgrounds, but also a more of an appreciation of how all that makes us all better as Americans. I won't say any more.
Anybody else?
Are we approving it tonight? Do we need a motion?
No.
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 That's at the board meeting on
Next one, right.
on the 15th.
Plus, I think it would be a good recruitment tool for
teachers of color
to recruit those minorities.
Good point.
Good point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Janine.
I wonder what the casualties will be.
What?
Yes, indeed.
Here she goes.
Yes. At this, well, previously, we have not talked to the board about the staffing ratio until January, but based on the new board calendar, the board wanted additional time to hear and think and contemplate the staffing ratio. Just to give a background, the staffing ratio is more or less the number of adults we hire, the number of students that represent one adult. And it's not a class size.
Right.
It's just a statistic that we use from year to year. We base that statistic on enrollment projections, on our budget, and what we think we can, what is a good number of staff to staff the schools effectively, so our kids are not in overcrowded classrooms, get the attention they need, and yet we are responsible to the taxpayers. Pete is going to make this presentation, and he is very knowledgeable about the numbers. So I have confidence in Pete.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. I hope I follow through on that. I think it's appropriate that after talking about potential future classes, we're now going to talk about potential teachers in classrooms, just in terms of sheer numbers. The instructional staffing allocation is one of those things we do once a year, and so at times I think it might be easy to lose sight of some of the pieces that go into this. So I started off by reminding us that based on the 2010-11 school year, where we saw the numbers were pretty different than what had been projected by Dr. Casarda, that we commissioned him to do a new study. And so in 2011, he gave us projections out to the 2025-2026 school year. So we're now working off of numbers that were developed 3 years ago, as opposed to a longer ago kind of a time period. And for the most part, we've been pretty close to what his numbers have been in the last 3 years. As you can see currently, as we look at for next year, he's projecting, if we do the Casarda B, again as a reminder, B is where the enrollment would come in if all other factors stayed the way he projects them to be. A is where enrollment would be less than what he projects based on a variety of factors, and C would be where it would be above. And so we've always taken that middle of the road Casarda B projection. And so right now he's predicting 5,123 students in District 99 for the 15-16 school year. Just to give you a little bit of perspective on that, that'll be the lowest number between now and 2025 as you look at his projections. So we'll have a slight upwards, peaking based on his numbers in the 2019-2020 school year at 5,234 students, and then coming back down in 25-26 to 5,204. So, we'll be plus or minus 100 students from where we currently are over the next 10 years, just to kind of give you a little bit more of a longer-term idea. As we've worked with these numbers the last couple of years, we've started to take into consideration our own enrollment numbers. And how does that compare to what he projected, both in the overall picture for the district as well as the impact it has on the individual buildings at North and South. So the last couple of years we have started to take a look at what we see ourselves in the building for our enrollment and have adjusted the overall FTE number up or down between the buildings, but still coming in at that overall CSARDA total. When we look at what we currently project for next year, we see right now 5,017 students, which is 106 under what he is projecting. There could be a lot of different factors in that, but the one thing I did want to make sure that we made note of is this is the earliest time period that we have pulled a number like that. That's something that we're not usually doing until the end of January, where oftentimes at the semester break, that's a prime opportunity for students to transfer in from other districts. As families move during the school year, that's where you'll see sometimes a jump. So there may be some numbers there, as well as some of the private parochial students may not have made their decisions yet. They may still be waiting to hear, did I get into Bennett, did I get into Montini, some of those kinds of things. So that number may climb between now and when we actually get to the staffing time period. So I just wanted to shed some light on that. The next part of the document that I prepared for you, I showed the last 7 years or so of where we've been in terms of the ratio that we've used as a district, the projected enrollment that CSARDA had given us, and then the instructional FTE that corresponded to that number, and then the difference from the previous year. So you can see it would go up and down based on that enrollment. And so if we look at continuing the 21.8 to 1 student ratio for 15-16, based on his projected enrollment of 5,123, that would give us an overall FTE number for the district of 235, which would be up 1.6 teachers from the current year. Because for this year, he had projected 5,088 students. So we're increasing in enrollment in that way. So then I showed you what that would mean in the section 3 there, what it would mean for both the North and South campus. And then I also played with the numbers a little bit based on what we see the enrollments in the buildings to be for next year. So for example, CSARDA is projecting North to be at 2,093. Right now their numbers show that they would be at 2,211. So that's a difference of 118 of an increase. Whereas South is projected to be at 3,030, and right now their numbers are projecting 2,806 for a difference of 224, which then gives you that overall loss as a district, or a decrease of 106 from what he's projecting. But again, these are numbers as of November 24th. So we anticipate probably seeing some movement there. As you know, we'll bring what we call the below the line and some of the other areas of need to you at the March board meeting. And then in the 4th section, I gave you some examples of what the FTE would look like if we were to move the ratio from 21.8 to 1 to different numbers. So I started off by showing you what they currently are for 14-15. The next column has 15-16 at that same ratio, 21.8. Then I went down by 0.2 to 21.6, and then 21.4, just so you could see what that would mean in terms of overall FTE for the district, as well as the overall FTE for each campus. And then I went in the other direction and said, okay, if we were to go up to 22 to 1, You would see that our FTE would come down to 232.9 overall as a district. If we went to 22.2, that would move us down again to 230.8. And then if we went to 22.4, it would put us at 228.7. So I just arbitrarily selected increments of 0.2 just to kind of give you a, some numbers to look at. And I think that was part of why you wanted to have some of this sooner than you have in the past, so that would give you the opportunity to make some decisions about where you thought you should be. So at this point, I would entertain any questions that anybody has.
For looking at the past, we're looking at projected enrollments from CSRDA. Wouldn't it be, is there no value in putting in there what the actual enrollment was? I mean, that's something that I'm not quite understanding. For instance, in 08-09, the projected enrollment 5423. I'm at the top of the second slide.
Sure.
I mean, what was the actual enrollment, and was there a difference? I mean, I'm just curious. I don't.
Sure. We could go back and pull those other numbers for you. Absolutely.
I mean, doesn't it make more sense to talk about what actually happened in the past versus what, or does it? I'm asking.
Absolutely. And what I would say, Mike, 08, 09, 09, 10, 10, 11, you would see a discrepancy between what he projected and what we actually had,
sure,
which was what caused us in 2011 to recommission him to do another study. So I can guarantee you those numbers would be off from his projections right before we did that.
This is a little bit like the weather, and I'm serious. The closer you are to the event, the more reliable the information is.
Sure.
The farther out you project, it becomes a line of best fit. I'm back on the statistical word. It's a line of best fit with the data, but you have to make some assumptions about different data values, and so it inherently becomes less accurate as you go out. So Pete's absolutely correct. We did find some discrepancies in 5 or 6 years ago. In part, those are based on no one predicted the recession either. And that caused some blips in terms of people moving in with multiple families living in the same dwelling and so forth that we hadn't seen before. But that we absolutely could find that information and plug it in. But that's one of the reasons we had him come back, is we thought it was far enough out that his values were probably not accurate anymore.
And just to speak to this year right now, Mike, as of November 24th, we have 5,007 students in the district, whereas he had projected 5,088. So right now we're down 81 students from where he thought we would be.
So the other point is high school enrollment's dynamic.
Right.
Yeah. It changes a lot at different points in the year. And there will be a blip in at the semester.
Yeah, I believe it.
And we have, of course, we have kids who graduate
early,
or one semester late, or so it also depends on what actual date of the year that you're looking at for this projection.
And then the projections on this fourth slide for alternative staffing ratios is all based on the CSRDA 5123, but our current building projections 5017. So why would we use the CSRDA number instead of our building projection number to look at these numbers? I don't what were your logic there?
Sure. Previously, the board has been most comfortable using a number that they felt confident based on the demographer study. Because there were quite a few years when I was in my other role where I tried to argue the point that we should be using our current numbers instead of CSRDA because we were projecting higher than what the CSRDA number was. And so what would come out of the conversation here was, well, We know there's going to be some fluctuations. We know there's going to be some blips. There's going to be some ups and some downs. This is a number that we're comfortable using based on his study of migration, death rate, growth in the middle schools, et cetera. So that's where the board has been most comfortable in the past.
But we are at a point now, it's 3 years past the last time we commissioned CSD. So the further away we get from that date, the accuracy dims, and our own evaluation of what's happening right now maybe takes a little bit more import.
Well, I believe the shelf life is longer than 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more like 10 or 12. And I would also say, because I was one of the ones saying to Pete, yeah, we have to use a CSD projection. That one of the reasons we did that is we wanted to have a consistent approach every year. We didn't want to go to one formula one year, another formula next. At least, and as well as Mark's projections, when he gives the board a 5-year projection, he assumes a CSD enrollment projections when he makes those. So we thought being sort of true to the process was important, even though, and frankly, we always have at the 11th hour, when we actually know how many kids are enrolled in classes, how many kids tend to stay in classes, we do shift numbers around. And right now, we're shifting numbers from south to north. 10 years ago, it was the other direction, just because those kind of dynamics happen. So it's really a matter of consistency in terms of we're using the same figures every time when we do our projections into the future.
Mark, I have a question. Are you comfortable with that staffing ratio, or would you have the board reevaluate that one way or the other?
Right now, as it stands, I think we are comfortable with the ratio. We don't.
Talking 21.8.
Right, 21.8.
Right, as it stands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I base that on the fact that when we, and you'll see this, as you've seen it in the past, we look at all our courses, we look at the enrollments in those courses. We don't feel we have to reduce, we cut a lot of courses out of the curriculum because we can't staff them. We don't feel we have a lot of classes, or many at all, that we have too many kids in.
That's my question. Are we turning kids away?
And we feel it's efficient.
Okay.
I'm not hearing, I don't think Pete's hearing, or Gina's hearing that, we're really struggling in the schools with really large class sizes and teachers stressed out and kids not getting the help they need because of our staffing ratio. And there have been times, when I first came here, because the district was growing, back 2003, 2004, 2005, we were growing every year. That was a stress.
Okay.
I'm not seeing that right now, but every year it's something we look at.
Okay.
And I would also note that this is the first year in quite some time that I can remember that in August or early September we didn't come to you and ask for an extra section.
Right.
You didn't.
In a course.
Right.
We didn't need an extra algebra or an extra Spanish or some of the areas that we have asked previous years. Yeah. So I know it hasn't happened every year, but it's been a pretty good number of years now.
The first time
needed to come and ask for an extra 0.2 in some area.
Right. If you need to, keep asking.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Do we still have the issue of core classes with far beyond the 28 numbers? We have core classes that have 30 or more, or are we sort of managing that?
That's a good question.
We have some.
Yeah.
It varies. It varies with move-ins and move-outs.
Yeah.
It varies in the time in which you're pulling numbers.
Today, tomorrow.
It can, but as Pete said, when they become far over what they should be,
come and
we oftentimes advocate for another section.
And sometimes due to the scheduling, you might have 30 in a section during, say, third period.
Yeah.
But then 4, 5, or 6, you have 22 or 23.
Yeah. All because of what fits with the kids' schedules.
What fits with the schedule and, how many singletons the student is attempting to get into that causes them to be pushed into basically the only period of the day
Right.
that fits in their schedule.
yeah,
So there's,
got it.
there's a lot of pieces that come into play. So where we do have 30, we probably don't have 30 in all the sections
I
of
see.
that particular course. But, you know, your global connections and some of the
Yeah.
others, they're going to be in that 28 to 30 range pretty consistently.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Lots of food for thought.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Mark. Proposed calendar?
So, no, I've got it someplace here.
Want mine?
No, I've got it. I'm good. Okay, this, every year about this time, we go through the process of proposing a calendar for the next school year. This is always an interesting process because the state of Illinois recently has changed the rules on what counts as a day and what doesn't. And you'll see at the bottom of this, it says we have 86 days first semester, 89 days second semester. Somehow I think it's supposed to be 70, or excuse me, 87 and 89. But apparently this passes muster. I believe it's because the parent conferences are included in this in addition. But what we have tried to do in the past is start school not so far before Labor Day that it's really hot, until we have our schools completely air conditioned. It's a challenge for us to have school when it's really hot. So the first day for teachers to report will be August 24th on this proposed calendar. First day of school, the 26th. We have
Sorry.
we have this, again, a 3-day Thanksgiving break, which is not a day off for the school year employees. They just work an extra day later in the year, but that Wednesday off has been very popular in the last couple of years. Our holiday break is December 21st through Friday, the January 1st. Which is always good to start school after all the football games are over. Some people just don't like having to go to school during those games. Final exams for the first semester, 13th, 14th, and 15th. In March, our spring break is actually 6 days because Good Friday is a non-attendance day officially. And one of the issues that we are trying to plan around is somewhat uncertainty over state testing in the future. As I've advised the board already, we're still having a hard time getting a definitive answer from the State Board of Education, and that may be even increasingly harder in the future because it's very likely there will be a new State Board of Education, and perhaps some changes at the top of State Board of Education, and it's uncertain whether the park testing will survive in its current format. But we are trying to, it serves us well to, at this time, I think, to plan more days in the second semester, understanding that some of those days will be disrupted by that testing.
Got it.
And then we always try to have graduation on the last day of school, which I believe is Friday the 3rd.
No, that's a teacher institute.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Terry. The last day that teachers are last day of the teachers' work year, which is Friday the 3rd.
Yes, sorry.
And we're not finding any major rebellion from all the Pulaski Day revelers out there.
I was going to ask
Missing out on
that.
that day. That's good. All right.
Now, do we have a variance on that still, or?
Actually, we have a variance on all the holidays at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We don't, by law, have to take any of the current school, or the school, yeah. We don't have to take Columbus Day, we don't have to take President's Day, we don't have to take Veterans Day. Now, if we have school on those days, at least Veterans Day, part of that requirement was we would have to have an assembly on Veterans Day. Both our schools currently have those kinds of functions, but there are schools in the area that have school on Veterans Day and have school on Columbus Day. I think our community has been pretty solid about.
Are we contractually obligated
No.
with the union at all on a certain date or time frame?
Not on the school holidays.
Okay.
I think our community has appreciated school holidays.
Yes.
Families do things on those days. Kids make college visits on those days. They have been important. Hopefully, we don't have a lot of extra school holidays based on the weather like last
right.
year.
I was going to bring that up.
Sure.
The polar vortex days.
And just to remind the board of this process, showing it to you tonight for questions. We've discussed it as an administration. I shared this with the Teachers Association. I'm also obligated to share it with the Support Staff Association, which I will do between now and the time it comes forward for approval. I intend to share it with the elementary districts.
Good, yeah.
Typically, we don't always start on the same day, but typically we have the same spring break and holiday break.
That's important.
It is for families.
Yes. Yeah.
It is.
You know, and traditionally, I know in 58, isn't there a 4-day weekend somewhere in
There is.
October or
Yes.
or March or something like that? Or
Yeah.
I think both. They think they'd have it twice. I think they do like
Sometimes we have
Institute Day.
3-day weekends when they have 4-day weekends.
Yeah.
Things like that happen.
Yeah, I just wondered if we were kind of connected with that kind
Well,
of thing.
they do more parent conferences than we do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they do one in both semesters, but okay.
Okay.
All right. Questions or comments? It's reasonable.
Work on that air conditioning.
I'm tired.
Okay, reports from the annual conference. Deb, do you want to lead off with the report since you are a delegate?
I didn't get a chance to go home and get my stuff, but I will tell you that the two that we had discussed,
That's what I wanted to know.
there was so much discussion on the floor with those, so I did pick out a couple of good ones, and then one that really surprised me, and one, and I want to say that we actually lost narrowly on our board, what we had chosen as how you wanted me to vote on those. We pretty narrowly lost on.
But it was a close vote.
On those, but it was very close. One of them was the longitudinal data. And there was a gentleman from another school district who was this is what he did for a living, and he was not convinced that there were good enough security measures in place.
Interesting.
And he went on, but people would really like to get up and call the question right away and stop the discussion and then take the vote. But it was pretty good. And then the other one was about it was the gun control, and that's what they really wanted to bring up. It didn't have anything to do about guns per se. It was all about having local control, board control, and that's one of the reasons about what we were talking about too. People, when they got up and did speak, they weren't talking about guns. They just wanted to make sure that boards would always have local control. And again, that was a real narrowly won or lost thing. And then the other one that was very surprising that we went ahead and we just took the ASB's position on, but people did not vote that way, okay? And one that we didn't even think about, and that was when you hold an elected office, as we do as a school board, they wanted language that specifically pointed out which offices you should not be able to concurrently hold.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Okay. And there were, maybe it was from a lot of smaller districts throughout the state, but they want to be able to hold
several
offices. IASB took the position, and as we did that, if you were an elected, maybe you would not be able to serve as, like, say, on the Downers Grove Village Council.
Yeah.
Because, but they were saying there were people that got up and were arguing that in such a small community, people held several offices and they shouldn't be
have a
So
hard enough time finding
actually,
people
that
willing
one,
to do it, so.
that one was just interesting,
Very
but a lot of interesting is, and because I was late, remember, to lunch.
That's because of that.
Normally, we are done less than 2 hours. This was probably 2 hours and 40 minutes of sitting in on discussions, so it was very
So was that
interesting.
one a close vote too, that last one?
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
And which
Very
way did it go?
interesting. It went against the
IASB.
IASB, which was really
That they
surprising, because I
can
have to tell you that sometimes for
offices.
years I've thought that maybe some delegates come in never even looking or discuss things with their boards, and they're just going to vote what they see there, but that was not the case. So, very good.
Well, thank you for doing that. That was a lot of work, and I know that was exhausting, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I always learn something interesting. So, and thank you for your input too. So, very nice.
Rick, do you have anything?
I went to the legislative one where they were, they brought in the state superintendent, state representatives, state senators, and they discussed education, testing, and then they opened it up to questions, and it was pretty informative. I was glad I was able to attend that one. So.
Thanks.
Attended with you a workshop on community engagement. Was pleased to see after we had a lot of discussion about how many layers you should have to go through on a website on your website to get to pertinent information about the district, and was pleased to discover after leaving, coming home, and I went on our website and noodled around, and we do a pretty good job here. I mean, it's pretty easy to find the information that that your community leaders and those involved, parents, would be looking for. Also, I mentioned just briefly that other.
Well, before you go, can I just, because we were sitting next to each other, just tag on to that and say that they showed some alternate ways to display the data that were much more user-friendly. And one of the nice things the woman who presented had gone over several hundred.
Yeah. Springfields from every state.
Springfields, she went to Springfields from every state, and she looked for their state results. But she went through several hundreds, if not thousands of pages to find it. But she gave us a nice list of recommended sites to look at. So I brought copies that I was going to give to Gina and Jill.
Our state of Illinois, where one of the things that we do really well here in Illinois is having that at-a-glance snapshot of your district. You go from community to community in Illinois, and you're going to find a similar snapshot that's easy to read. There's good graphics. It's really easy to understand. Other states, you're liable to get just a long list of data or something that makes it hard for people to find the information they're looking for or understand it readily.
It's nice to know we do something right.
There you go. So I just point that out. This another workshop that I attended that I mentioned earlier, one thing that was interesting that I kind of initially thought, why am I sitting here listening to this? They had an old greenhouse that they spent a considerable amount of time with volunteers and $10,000, and they rebuilt this greenhouse. And I thought, well, because I had gone into this workshop hoping to maybe get some ideas about how and where it makes sense to knock down some walls in an older building, and what to do to adapt an older building to some of the Common Core curriculum and approaches that we're seeing. But one thing that did occur to me is that an event like that building, that greenhouse, and this was a smaller town, but it engaged the whole community, and that had a little lasting impression on me. Is that because we've had some discussions as a board about how to engage the community, and so something like that involving the community and hands-on. In making something better, it can be a real benefit. And I know that part of our, we're right now trying to, our master facility planning, trying to document our existing conditions. We're going around, we're doing some videotaping and things of that nature so that people can see what it is that we have here. So something to think about there. And we all attended the general sessions, but I stayed for Sunday again this year. And last year it was the honor flights. The fellow who started those out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base gave the discussion, and I came back from that and said, boy, I wish we could have something about that here, and we did at North this year, and it was terrific and inspirational. This year, a fellow who started a kind of a charitable giving organization revolving around something called We Day. It's gotten very popular, and it's kind of going across the country right now. And the idea is to engage the students in an opportunity to give locally, because charity begins at home. And globally. You have to do those two things, and your reward, and after identifying something you're going to do, acting on it, reporting out on it, then you get to, as your reward, you get to go and attend this We Day celebration for free, and they bring in these big name performers and people. It's all about getting the kids energized about giving and the benefits in the educational process to real tangible benefits to giving. And so I forward some information to Mark already about that, who wisely said to me, hey, we're already doing an awful lot of charity work here at the schools. However, this might be something that we could get involved in without having to do more, but rather repackaging and rechanneling what we're doing so that the kids even get even more out of what they're doing right now. And this would be a good thing to get involved in. It was very inspirational, again. So my favorite session, if I could only go to one thing the whole weekend, that's what I would do. I'd just go back to Sunday morning. Someone else
attended this with Mike.
Right.
And what they were saying is, like Mark was saying, that we already do all these things. They're not asking you to do any more. What they want to do is recognize what you're doing already, and then to celebrate. So it's not anything more that you have to bring in. They're recognizing the things that you are already doing there. What groups that we have that are, because I know that we get reports from the students all the time about whether they're setting up shop and they're doing collecting for food banks and things like that, which would be something locally, or they're doing something more more globally, and they recognize those, and you report those things to them, and then they recognize that and give you access to go to these We Days. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty cool. And getting the community to know more about what our students are doing here is only a plus. And then maybe somebody else wants to, I'm going to stop talking, maybe somebody else wants to talk about Vision 2020 a little bit. So.
Good. I went to the one session on the IHSA, and they briefed us on some current topics and issues, and a lot of that sometimes devolves into a lot of discussion about football and alignment and playoff travel, a lot of downstate small school issues, some discussion on concussions, and if you read the Tribune on Sunday, there's a lawsuit that's been filed about participants in football from 2002, and they're looking for a class action. And I would just bring that to the board's attention moving forward, that not that we have anything here in this district, but I could see that playing out. I think they were looking for 2002 either through 10 or a couple more years after, but that could potentially be a huge lawsuit, and it comes with some very interesting implications. And then I attended one on advanced finance, talked about the different operating funds, educational, IMRF, et cetera, just to kind of give you a better understanding of those types of things. Not that we don't trust Mr. Stalen, just to understand it in layman's terms.
I went to one that's the top 10 recommended board actions for 2015, excuse me. And we're doing all of these now that they presented.
Way ahead of the game.
So we are way ahead of the game, and I can give you those 10, but a lot of them we are doing now. So
what are they?
It was bring your vision and mission to the forefront, engage your community, have mentor and coaches, be informed on legislation, integrate new technologies, examine school security, consider learning space design, promote 21st century skills, be a future-ready school, and prepare students for their next steps. So those are many things that we are doing right now. And I think one thing that I got the most out of is as I sat and had a nice discussion for over an hour with a superintendent from a small district by the Shawnee National Forest down in southern Illinois, and some of the challenges that he has in being a small district. And his son is in a district that is right next to Ferguson. And some of the challenges that they've been going through with the last several months of the situation there. And it was just a very interesting discussion. And sometimes I think we get more out of talking to individuals and that at the conference. So I would also encourage us that since we are doing many of these things on our own, that maybe we should start presenting.
Yeah, we talked about that
at
last year too.
At the conference. I really think that would be a good opportunity for us because we have so many wonderful things with our staff and that. And I think maybe we could work on that and get that going.
Do you mean having the board members present or the staff members present? Or both?
Maybe a little bit of both.
A little bit of both?
Maybe a little, you know, just.
Many of the presentations have both.
Most do, yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know. I don't want to put more on someone else's plate, but I really think that that's a useful
we have a lot
thing
to share
for us to do. Since, to be honest with you, I think we're one of the cutting-edge districts in the state, and we might as well tout our good happenings.
Well, and share with others, you know, so that they can better themselves as well.
Yeah,
I agree. And, you know, we have a lot of staff who have done, especially of late, it seems, who have done a lot of presentations at national conferences and that, so maybe
Most recently.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean,
probably
and
some of
looking-
that here, too.
You know, just in looking at the offerings that are given, I really think that there's opportunities for us to share some of our good works. So,
Put that on the parking lot.
Do you want to talk about anything?
Sessions I went to were about recruiting a superintendent.
Okay.
Went to one of those too.
Actually, those were very, I mean, the search firm stuff was pretty mundane, but it was very interesting to learn about how the board dynamics of that, and because there were several different examples, but actually these processes turn out to be very positive for the board. And I also got a sense of the timeline. So,
did you get a sense for the cost by chance?
well, the State School Board Association was one of the presentations I went to, and their cost was about they said it depends on what you want, but I think they quoted $6,900. The search firms are more expensive, but they probably in some way, well, I presume you get what you pay for. Depends what you're looking for. I think the search firms probably do a better job of recruiting people as opposed to putting out notices. They have networks. I'm not sure the School Board Association has the same kind of networks.
Took that too.
I would say it's more typical in the suburban areas to use a search firm. It's more typical downstate to use a School Board Association. But there is clearly a difference in the cost. It really depends on what you're looking for. But it was very positive. The effect of the process on the board, it sounds like, and again, I heard from several different situations, seemed very positive.
Mark, did you have anything you wanted to?
Well, I could just talk for a minute about the Vision 2020. I thought the general session first. The second general session was really good. Being a past board member, it was like, how to be a good board member. And of course, as an administrator, I love to see you guys minimize as much as possible. Tongue in cheek. But because I do think, I thought that was an interesting one for him to, and I thought he was an excellent presenter. And he ended it really with all the team players and all the people that are involved in building a good school. And the last piece was he didn't have legislators on that list because they're not on board yet. And then we went right into the legislative one where everybody had their fist clenched ready for the legislators. But really, the Vision 2020 is something that I have been involved in since IASA brought the other groups in. But they really were the core association with that. And their approach, it is a very different approach, and something that everybody, well, if you ask at any time in the last decade, would the Superintendent's Association, would the IASBO, would they have a better plan for education? They would all think, yeah, I think we could do better than what's out there. But this approach is really taking, looking at all the counties, 102 counties in the state, getting people at all those levels, superintendents from all those sections, and getting key people in each of the counties to make it a statewide effort, and knowing that the real approach here is going to be grassroots and getting into the politicians, if you hit them where it counts, and that's in the ballot box. And he mentioned that morning the PTA Association signed on to Vision 2020. Happens to be my sister-in-law is president of Illinois PTA, so we kind of knew that was going to happen. But I think that's really is the approach. Now they need to get all the school boards, all the moms and dads supporting the school board members involved in this direction. And the fact that they want to hit on the 4 key points: qualified, high-quality educators, good assessment, curriculum, and also the funding, adequate funding, and equitable funding. They want to make it very comprehensive. And that's really where some of the battles will be still in getting everybody on the same page. But they do think that they will get a majority of people involved at a grassroots level certainly to agree with the tenets of what Vision 2020 is. And, there always will be those that, just like Senate Bill 16, who wins, who loses, and that's really what's held up the state for decades, is that as soon as they come up with an idea, I want to see the printouts, the legislators want to see the printouts, oh, I got more districts losing. Whether it's fair or not, or equitable or not, or sensible, doesn't matter. No, I can't get behind it. Just part ways. Subdivisions of the state, Chicago suburban areas and downstate. So in 1979, when I started in this whole thing with looking at school finance as an auditor and hearing the stories, it's been the same argument, right. Same problem. So this really is a fresh approach, and I hope it's successful, because we really do need the education to be coming from educators, and not from legislators. And this is hopefully the approach that'll get us there. So,
does anybody else have anything you want to share before we move on?
I just wanted to give my apology for not being at the most of you knew that I had another obligation, and I'm really sorry. I think it was the first one I've missed. And it sounds like you really learned a lot, as always, so I'm really glad you were all able to be there and bring it back to share.
I think you had a wedding you were at. Was that?
No, actually, it was the other thing.
Oh, it was other thing. Oh,
it was the other end.
Got it. Well.
Anyway, it was an obligation.
Perfectly understandable.
That's right. Thank you.
So.
But I'm really glad you all got there. It was good to hear about the delegate assembly, too. That's really, you never know. You just never know.
Okay, so we'll move on to our reception, unless anybody else had. Okay. We'll move on to our reception of visitors. This is an opportunity for the audience to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99.
Any takers?
Seeing none. Before we go to adjournment, just we do have a meeting back here on the 15th, but I did want to emphasize for everybody at home that there will be a North High facility review and input session on Monday, December 8th at 7 p.m. And that'll be in the auditorium, I expect? Cafeteria? And then at South High, the same facility review and input session would be on Wednesday, December 10th at 7 p.m. in the cafetorium. So please try to be there.
Might I make a public service announcement on behalf of the foundation? It's Cyber Monday. And I discovered that there's something called Amazon Smile. So if you buy anything through Amazon, you can buy the same thing through the Amazon Smile site, and you can designate the District 99 Education Foundation as the recipient, and they will receive a small percentage of the proceeds of the sale.
But just for today?
No, it's any day, but it's apropos because today is Cyber Monday and people are shopping online, and so.
And I bought all my Christmas presents at noon.
So I remembered it, and I switched over to the Amazon Smile site, and I was able to do everything that I was doing through the regular site, and a little bit of money went to the foundation.
Great.
So
Thank you very
if
much.
everybody will do that, that would help things out, right?
I will.
That's it. Thanks.
No, thank you.
Or your Target credit card.
Or your Target credit card. Any other comments, public service announcements, whatever? Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Keith moves.
Second.
All those, Mike seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much.